Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Vortex, where lies and falsehoods are trapped and exposed. I'm Michael Voris. Are you ready to die right now? If your clock stopped right now, are you ready to stand before the King of the universe? That's a shorthand way of saying, are you in a state of sanctifying grace? Because if you're not, then you're in a state of mortal sin. And everyone who dies in a state of mortal sin descends directly and immediately into hell. If, however, you happen to find yourself at a funeral mass where the priest is one of those liberal, feel-good, don't hurt anyone's feelings types, well, you might get the idea that the church doesn't even believe in hell anymore. This would be evidenced by the near unanimous approach these days to talking about the dearly departed as though they are already in heaven. You know, like, Bob has passed from this life, but we know he's safe in the care of the Lord, playing the back nine up there. Bob so loved his golf game. Blech! What stupidity! How insulting to Almighty God, not to mention a truly rotten thing to do to Bob. Bob has been escorted into the presence of the divine judge, as each and every one of us will be one day. He has had final and everlasting judgment passed on his soul. He has passed from the realm of this life. Bob probably has no awareness of golf any longer, and if he does, he most certainly couldn't give a rip about it. Now, lots of clergy will say, well, we're trying to comfort the grieving. That's a cop-out. No, you're not. You're avoiding discussion about the real reality of death, that souls are judged and reward and punishment is meted out. Oh, but that's too judgmental. It's too mean. What a bunch of party poopers those faithful Catholics are. I mean, sure, Bob wasn't perfect. He had his issues, but God isn't going to throw Bob into hell for all eternity because he missed Mass each week. I mean, he's basically a nice guy. That's the mentality of so many people in the church today. It's terrifying. They act as though you have to be Adolph Hitler to end up in hell. Everything short of murdering 6 million Jews and launching a world war in which another 55 million died is okay. After all, God is love. He understands. He is a forgiving God. All of those statements are true, every bit of them, but those truths are routinely, woefully misapplied and preached about many times on the parish level. God is love, absolutely, and that love demands a response from us to love Him in return. To reject that love is to reject Him, since love is what He is. Refusing to go to Mass on Sundays and holy days is rejecting God, His love. If you have rejected God in this life, you don't get a chance in the next to suddenly change your mind. Mercy ends at the grave. Mercy in the sense of us being able to willfully reach out for it and grab it. After death, the mercy extended to us is the result of what we have done in this life. That's what purgatory is. The other cute little sounding saying, woefully misapplied, is God understands. Well, of course He understands. He's God. It doesn't mean He agrees or condones. We all understand Jeffrey Dahmer was a serial killer who cannibalized his victims. It doesn't mean we view it as acceptable. God never accepts sin. Sin is the most repugnant thing there is to the divine majesty and purity. To even imply that God just sort of excuses it as no big deal is to have a complete failure of understanding about the crucifixion of our blessed Lord. And the whopper, God is a forgiving God. He wouldn't throw a soul into hell for all eternity. These two phrases on their own, while both true, are a complete non sequitur. God is a forgiving God. A sinner must make appeal, however, to be forgiven. God will always grant that forgiveness, but He can't grant what isn't requested. This is the great danger of modern times, the denial, either direct or indirect, of the reality of sin. If you aren't aware of your sin, your offenses against the divine majesty, why would you ask to be forgiven? And if the sin is not forgiven, well, you can do the math. And no, God does not throw anyone into hell. The soul casts itself into hell because it cannot stand to be in the divine presence. It's painful to it. Hell is actually God's mercy. He has given the soul a place where it can be away from Him, because to be in His presence would be more torturous than to be in hell. When we die, we behold ourselves and our condition the way we actually are, not the way we fancy ourselves. we find ourselves in the blinding light of divine justice. All our hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of committed sins over a lifetime. For the first time in our existence, we see ourselves as God sees us. For the majority of us, I suspect it's not going to be a pretty picture. Does the person working at Planned Parenthood, who has made a career on the corpses of children, really think they're going to be escorted into heaven without having sought forgiveness? Does the husband or wife, who imagines themselves cheating on their spouse, or who actually does cheat on their spouse, really think there's going to be no accounting for those sins? You don't have to be Hitler to go to hell. When someone dies, the church prays for them so that they might be assisted in their sufferings after death, which they are undergoing to atone for the temporal punishment due their sins. That is, provided they made it to purgatory. If they did not seek forgiveness and their sins were serious, they go to hell, plain and simple. How difficult is it to get through this life today without committing serious sin? Pretty darn difficult. The church teaches that there is heaven, hell, and purgatory. For people in the church to deny the reality of the last two, either directly or indirectly, is to deny Christ's words. God bless you. I'm Michael Voris.